Welcome to Culture Before Content. Culture Before Content, from Music for All and presented by Yamaha. And now, here's your host, David Duarte.
Hey, welcome to the show. As they said, I'm David Duarte, your host, and whether you're here live, catching a replay, or listening later, I'm happy you are here. You're the reason this show is so fun to do, and every listen, every comment, and every moment you spend here means a great deal to all of us. At Music for All, and within the Culture Before Content community, our mission is to create, provide, and expand positively life-changing experiences through music. And none of this happens without support, and we are incredibly grateful to Yamaha, who is our national presenting sponsor, for help bringing this mission to life. All right. Well, many of you are here catching us live. Many of you are listening. I don't know. You'll have to tell me what's happening later. I never can figure this out. But if you want to catch the show live every week, here's how it works. This feed is typically updated on Saturdays on the Music for All Facebook page. So just head over to Facebook, and to join the conversation, just visit the Music for All Facebook page and look for the events tab and mark that you're interested or plan to attend. Oh, one of those cool things I've learned, I keep wanting to mark that I'm going, but you have to wait a second. So you have mark interested, wait like 5 seconds, and then I'm going. So now it lets you know that we're going. And do that, and you can simply watch and join the conversation. And then if you're interested, you could also watch us on YouTube. I know I put that on my Instagram account that you can watch us on YouTube, but just simply head over to YouTube on anything and search for Music for All and click on the live tab, and we will pop right up and you'll find the show. Whether you're on Facebook or YouTube, you can just jump into the chat, leave a comment, or be a part of the show. And if you miss it live, don't worry. There is a very impressive audio-only episodes that drop every Monday. It's on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, other major platforms. However you tune in, you can find every single episode, audio or video, at musicforall.org/podcast. I got that all out today. All right. Well, let's get on to the show. Today, we have an amazing guest. Today's guest is Mrs. Audrey Murphy. She's the band director at East Cobb Middle School in Marietta, Georgia. Under her leadership, her ensembles have earned consecutive superior ratings. She's also a 4-time National Band Association Citation of Excellence recipient. She has conducted the 2024 Georgia Middle School All-State Band. What an amazing honor. And serves on the NBA Board of Directors. That's the National Bandy Association, not basketball. And she's widely respected for her focus on building a positive and inclusive band culture where students are challenged to achieve excellence through community, consistency, and care. And you're about to find out why. So please welcome through, put your hands together, and welcome Miss Audrey Murphy.
Hello. Thank you, David.
Oh my gosh. To those of you who are listening, I'm looking at probably one of the most amazing backgrounds as a podcaster that I can see. You've got amazing sound back there. You got the headphones. Man, you've even got the cool little thing that goes on the microphone. I'm a little jealous right now. Mine's kind of
I'm going to take no credit for that. I'd like to thank my sponsor, Backbeat Productions, LLC, otherwise known as my husband, who, by the way, I saw when he shared something about tonight, he was sure to mention that this was his microphone. So everyone, this is my husband's microphone that he mentioned in his post.
Everyone should get one. It's a Shure SM7B. Just pop over. I'm kidding. It's I feel like we're doing advertisements here for several companies. Yeah. But well, let's take a moment. Why don't you take a moment and introduce yourself and let us know a little bit about you?
Okay. Well, I grew up in Columbia, South Carolina. And then after leaving high school, I went to school at East Carolina University. I taught in North Carolina for 4 years before I moved to Georgia in 2004. Taught at Hopewell Middle School for almost 20 years. This is now only my 3rd year at East Cobb Middle School in Marietta. So I feel like I've been teaching forever, but I love it just as much as I did the first day.
Oh, my goodness. And so I love this. So how many years in total have you been teaching?
This is my 26th year.
Well, you only look like you're 25 years old, so I don't know how that's even possible. I'm always complimentary to my guests. But, let's get on to the show, because, when you said you were going to be on the show and we said, let's talk a little bit about band culture. So one of the things I love, and I think I told you this right before you popped on, is this is my first year of officially teaching middle school. So I've got my new biases now towards middle school band culture, but in the end, it's just band culture. So, let's talk. So Audrey, when you think middle school band and you think culture, what's the first thing that pops in your head?
First of all, they're insane. Like, if you figured this out, that they're actually
Oh,
insane.
you want to hear a little bit of story? This is how I know. So I team teach with middle school. So like I'm the secondary, so to speak. I know Steve Kusky, if you're listening, I'm not really he's great, but he got ill on day 3 and I had not a chance to like learn names. I was just taking roll, trying to figure things out. And he left me alone with 65 7th graders on my own after 3 days. So to say that they're insane, I feel it right here in the heart.
Now, to be fair, I also have to be a little insane to teach middle school for this long. So that is not lost on me at all. But I mean, I love them. I will say this. You mentioned 7th grade. I do think that 7th grade is the most challenging of the 3 grade levels that I teach. I will tell anybody that. That has not changed throughout my career. A lot of people were surprised about that, but I think it's just simply because of where they are physiologically at that point. They're just wow. It's like 6th grade, they're babies, because they're coming up from the elementary school. And then 7th grade, they turn into completely different children. Like I feel like I have to handle them a completely different way when they become 7th graders. And then 8th graders, it's like they go home over the summer and they come back and I'm like, wow, you're like really cool again. This is awesome. You know?
So are you saying that like in 6th grade, because this is what I experience, it's exactly what I've experienced. In 6th grade, they're so sweet and innocent. It's their first time around. It's probably elementary schools, small elementary schools, and all of a sudden they're in the big middle school.
Oh, yeah.
But I think you're right. I think once they get to 7th grade, they're starting to realize they've got their patterns. But 8th grade, it's almost like they're almost getting ready for high school. And you're right. You can almost talk to them as almost as human beings.
Yeah. That's very cool.
So what are some of the things that, when we're talking about the culture, what does your classroom look like in terms of like, how are the students are, what are your expectations of them? Do you have any secrets of like, how do you put your classes together? How long things take to run? See, those are those multiple questions that come your way.
Oh, yeah. Got it. Well, first there has to be structure and routine. Middle schoolers don't realize that they want or need that, but they want and need that. So our classes are very, very structured. I like to treat it as though if I'm ever absent and I could maybe pick a kid to run the class knows exactly what the order is. They know exactly what we're going to do. They know that after attendance, we're going to start with buzzing. We're going to start with long tones. We're going to do some lip slurs or warm-ups from the book. After that, we might do some rhythm exercises. I love to use, we have an assistant band director with our program, Chase Pauley. He introduced me to Rhythm Randomizer, which I had never used before, but it's really, really cool because you can just click a button and it'll put new rhythms up and you can put different settings in there, like different time signatures, different beat patterns. So we might do Rhythm Randomizer. We'll do some solfege. We'll do a little bit of singing, some oral exercises. Then we'll go to the book or the literature. Literature, believe it or not, is what we spend the least amount of time on, especially in 6th grade. And that's a message that I try to send to as many people as possible, especially young teachers, that all of your work is in 6th grade. If you can nail it in 6th grade, by the time they get to 8th grade, they're pretty self-sufficient on the things that a lot of people spend excessive time on. Because ideally, my 8th graders, when I hand them a piece of music, they already know a sight reading process. They already understand the function of time signatures. They understand the function of key signatures. That's not what we're spending most of our time on when they're in 8th grade. But in 6th grade, we spend the most time on fundamentals and rhythm reading and note reading and fingerings. And it's just a really, really slow process. But, if you're patient, then it definitely pays off later. But even in 8th grade, I would say that we spend the least amount of time on literature. That's always at the very end of class.
And so what would you say is the secret, to 6th grade? Because I'm thinking to myself, you get all these kids, they're all brand new. About how long do you feel like it takes before those kids can start to function, like they know what to expect, or you feel like you're making your way onto the things that you need out of them?
Well, I mean, you just have to establish it from day one, expectations. And for me, it begins with, the way that you manage your classroom, the way that you run your classroom, the students, everything from like visually, what does your classroom look like? Is there stuff thrown everywhere and disorganization? Now, I will admit I'm not the most organized person, and I'm very grateful for our assistant band director because that is something that he is very good at, which is one of the reasons that we work really well together. But when the kids come into the room, they need to be in a space that looks like, okay, we're prepared to focus and work. So that seems like something that's very tiny, but actually it's a really big thing. Um, Honestly, the way that you greet them, something that's very important to me is when every student walks into the classroom, we always say good morning or good afternoon as they're walking into the door to every single kid. And honestly, it really helps with sixth grade. We have about 140 sixth graders, I think. It helps to learn their names. So when I'm standing at the door, I'll say good morning, and then I'll practice saying their name after it. And first of all, you could be the only person that greeted that kid all day long. You never
I believe
know.
that.
You could be
Oh,
the only person, right? And also it helps them establish trust, right? It helps you to establish trust. They trust you because they feel like you actually care about them, you know? Um, when they leave at the end of class, we always say, have a great day. Have a good afternoon. Have a great weekend. We'll see you on Monday. And again, you could be the only person that does that, so I don't know if the audience realizes we may talk very little about like band specific pedagogy type stuff, but it is culture before content, right?
It is. Well, I always like to say that because that's, and that's like I've got my little questions. I wrote down. I have my little piece of paper. I wrote down. I wrote down the rhythm randomizer. I see. I don't know why ever doesn't do this, but this is totally my PD. Every weekend, I get these cool PDs and these cool ideas. I get to go look at them. But I'm thinking to myself, you're right. And you're not the only person who has said, learn their names. I mean, it came up from a Facebook friend, like the first or second week of the show, because we were all just talking about what's the most important thing. And it just popped out names, learn names. Because I think in band, one of the things we do different is we're so personal with the kids. And what other class can get kids to sit still for 50 minutes? I mean, and how long does that take? But, and I was thinking, how do you balance empathy with your high standards? Like, how do you get that, that control over the students quickly? And then, you want the kids to be here. And also at the same time, you got to let them know that you care the right way. How long does that
yeah,
take?
absolutely.
How do you, do you have any magic secrets on that?
Well, I mean, I don't think that there's no magic secret or special sauce or fairy dust or anything like that. I mean, it's basic respect for the children. Like, we can't treat them like they're our employees. like like coming to band is a job. Like, to me, I respect the fact that I get to do this, and I respect my role not just within the school, but within the kids' lives, and also just within society in general. Like, here's an example. So I have carpool duty. Chase and I both have carpool duty, and it's just our principal and the two of us that stand outside in the morning. So on one hand, you'd be like, "Oh my gosh, why do we have carpool duty?" But we have carpool duty with the principal. So say, so we get to talk to him, and he likes to listen to like leadership podcasts and do all that stuff. And when you're a band kid, like most of what we do is leadership. Like most band directors were at least a section leader or something in high school marching band or college, or most of us were drum majors and all that stuff, leadership. So one of the most, I think, flattering things someone has ever said to me. This is a close friend of mine, Marshall Gagne. He's an outstanding low brass instructor, tubist, great friend, also one of the smartest people I know. He said to me one time, if you weren't a teacher, would you be a sociologist? Like, just out of the blue. And for a second, it caught me off guard. And then I realized what he was saying. And he continued and he said, you just seem like you're really interested in people. So if you want to call that the secret sauce, That's the secret sauce. Like I'm actually interested in the students. I'm interested in their lives. But I was talking about carpool duty. So every morning as the cars go by, I make a point to wave to every driver. And it's interesting because you have some drivers that you can tell they're like trying to avoid eye contact. So they never look, right? You have some drivers that always smile and wave back. And you have some drivers that sometimes they wave and sometimes they don't, right? And it's always really interesting to me because I'm going to wave no matter what. Like, even I know, like, I can tell you, like, the make and model of this car that's going to come through. And I know that this mom is not going to wave back at me. But you know what? I'm going to try anyway. And maybe someday she might. Or maybe I just don't know what she's going through before she drives into the carpool lane, right? So I had that conversation with my principal one morning. And I said, adults are just big kids, right? Because we had the same conversation about children. There's a student that walks up to our school every morning, and he has a hoodie on, he has his hands in the pocket, he has his head down, and we greet every student, we say good morning, and he never even makes eye contact, he won't speak. And so finally I looked at my principal one day and I said, it's going to be the last day of school and that kid's going to say hi. It's going to be the last day of school, but he might not. And guess what? That doesn't mean that we should stop trying. That doesn't mean that he's not receiving it just because he doesn't reply. And we have to remember that we can't give to receive. Again, we could be the only people that greet that kid all day long. And whether or not he says good hello or have a good day back to us is irrelevant.
We can start playing my games. Like, this is one of the games I haven't played in a while. Agree or disagree. Even though the kid might not say it, it might be the most important thing of their day that they look forward to. They just might not vocalize it. And you don't know that. I've learned that about a bunch of kids. And it's funny you say that about, one of my things that I like to do is, and I've seen the habit growing. I just wave at every kid that I see, and I'll keep waving at them until they wave back, and then I'll smile. And what's happened now after a few months is now they're coming back to me and they're waving at me all the time. And I think it goes back to, this is my word, is connection. And I think we as band directors, we adore the connection, whether it's a musical connection, a personal connection. I think we're just addicted to that, having that connection, because it's like, it's also communication. We need to know that they're also hearing what we say or feeling what we say. And I've learned, because as you said, even if a kid never responds to me, it doesn't mean they don't feel it. It does not mean that you might not be one of the most important parts of their day. So I think that's hugely important. And I encourage everyone out there, just start waving at kids and smiling and see how long it takes to wave back. And I think it was one of my other band director friends who said, some of those kids just need to feel it in their heart that someone's actually talking to them,
right?
And they don't have to respond.
Exactly. And that definitely manifests itself. People ask all the time, like, how do you have a successful program? I mean, that's step one. And I feel like sometimes, with social media and things that people see online, they feel like it has to be something that's grand and fancy. Like, you can just say good morning to a kid at your door. It doesn't have to be like a souped up handshake. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like people, they put that pressure on themselves, and it's not that complicated. You don't have to make it something grand. Like, a simple good morning doesn't take very much. Not just good morning, but good morning and eye contact. That's something else that's very important. I actually was speaking with a student teacher recently who was having trouble getting the students to engage from the podium. And I said, well, how can you expect them to engage with you and you're not engaged with them? If your head's in the score, or you're talking to them and your head's down like this, why should they look? It starts with something very simple. When I speak to kids, and I'm sure we see this all over the place because of all of the devices, kids nowadays don't really give you eye contact when you talk to them. And I know that, like, bothers me. Like, I guess because I'm old and that's not how I grew up. But When I am in front of a class of students and I'm speaking to them and I'm making eye contact with everybody, like I'm panning the room and there are kids that are looking down at the floor, then I say, I'm sorry, like, how would you feel if I was looking at the floor and talking to you, like, show me at least that you're trying to listen.
I,
you
I
know?
always say the phrase, listen with your eyes, please. I always say
Yeah.
that. I need you to listen with your eyes because I know you're paying attention. Or as I like to also say, nobody's looking down like this and is ever up to anything good. That's, luckily, I
Right.
think cell phone policies have been changing quite a bit. I know in my
Oh,
own
yes.
district, it's changed quite to a positive for me, because it's something now that I can refer to, because it used to be impossible after COVID to try to get the kids to put them away. We'd kind of go through our rigmarole to get them to put it away. But I feel
Mhm.
like now, after time, that the districts are coming down, the states are coming down, and it's starting to get more effective, because it's just trying to get that kid off the cell phone for even just 5-10 minutes, if they're because my other thing I think personally is I think many of them are addicted to their cell phone because it is their best friend.
Yes.
And they might not have the social things, and I'm just trying to give that to them.
Yeah,
um
absolutely. Well, and that's another thing that I don't take for granted in the fact that I get to teach band because you can't play an instrument with an iPad or a cell phone. you know, it's like one of the few places where, that'd be really difficult for you to play your instrument with a phone in your hand,
well,
right?
I made the decision this year. I'm going to tune. I was like, no tuners. We're not having any cell phones, and even I'm going to upload. I'm going to hold to that policy that we're going to either have to find a tuner or find a way or just listen to tune, but we're not going to use the cell phone as the excuse, because any excuse to use we'll take.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
All right, well, let's
yeah,
keep going on this classroom thing.
absolutely.
So you said something earlier too about, the kids taking over, like what, because I think that's the true sign of like you've made it, is when you're absent for that first time and your classroom runs.
Yep.
Because I feel like you have actually, the culture of your classroom is finally come out in those kids. I always fear, like, this is my first year on the job. And that's always the first thing I always think is like, how long is it going to take for this set of kids to understand that when I am gone, I expect more. And truthfully, they expect more eventually. But how do you move from a teacher driven classroom to a student driven classroom? And I think that's the culture that I've always looking for, because as an administrator, that's what I noticed, is it was a lot of top down. We all, as you said, teach more about the music, don't just teach the music.
Mm.
And so, how do we move from the teacher driven to the student driven? What are your thoughts on that?
I try to not spoon feed everything to my kids. I mean, that starts really it's every single day. Like I ask them questions and I have them respond instead of telling them the answer to everything, They're smart. Middle schoolers are very smart
Mm.
and they can definitely put the pieces together, and pedagogy wise, like I just give them the space to have their own accountability and ownership every single day in every class period.
I think that's a really good part of it. And like you said, any differences between sixth grade through eighth grade, just like, I'm sure you expect your eighth graders to already have it starting on day one. And,
Mhm.
and do you have any like other rituals that you have that kind of help move this along?
Bottom line is you've got to be consistent and relentless. You have to be
I,
consistent and relentless. You cannot allow them to not do it correctly, and you have to sometimes that takes some people think that takes a lot of energy, but so be it. Again, if you can start that in 6th grade, then it pays off very quickly.
And how do you keep your energy? Because that's the other part of it too. We've been teaching for a long time, between the two of us. Which is odd because again, we're both like 29. But how do you keep your personal energy? Is that something that's natural for you? Do you have to like mentally prepare? Because I know sometimes I think to myself, okay, one more cup of coffee or one more sip of coffee, and now I got to put my game face on and make sure that every little detail is going to go to plan to make sure this day happens. Do you have any
Right.
rituals personally?
Well, not I wouldn't say specific rituals like the way that I start my morning. I did for a time. I don't do it anymore. I may get back into it. As I was driving to school, I would just record a video of my musings, like just whatever I'm thinking about or whatever I'm preparing to do at school. And, that was actually very helpful because it was like an oral diary or journal. But now I've like taken up too much space on my phone. So I've stopped doing that. But I also focus on my non-band life.
Oh.
That is the key for me. I am a 5 a.m. workout girl because I actually enjoy working out. I
Wait, what
love
time does school
exerting.
start?
So, well, clock hours are 8:30, but clock hours are not
Yeah,
band
I
director
don't care.
hours,
Yeah.
right?
Nope, not even close.
So, yeah, I love. First of all, I could never work out after school. Like I'm done. Yeah. So, those of you out there who can work out after school, I have mad respect for you because I cannot. But what I can do is get up at 4 a.m. And I'm not a morning person. I never have been. My husband is in awe of me because I can do this. And I'm like, I don't enjoy getting up at 4 a.m. I enjoy knowing the outcome after I finish doing that workout. I enjoy knowing how my brain's going to work after I've done this workout. For years, I went to Orange Theory. Now I'm doing Burn Boot Camp. But I just feel so good when it's over and I feel so ready to start the day. Another thing that I do is, well, about, I guess, 4 years ago, I started playing tennis. I've never been an athlete my whole life. That was the first time I had done any sport. It was during COVID. There was someone in my neighborhood. My husband and I moved into a swim tennis neighborhood. We had no idea. We didn't even know what that was. We were just looking for very specific things within the house. But what I learned is if you live in a swim tennis neighborhood, you probably should be playing tennis. So someone in our neighborhood said, "Hey, let's start a beginning women's tennis team." And it was during COVID, so there really wasn't much else that we could do, and we could all go outside. And so I started learning to play tennis, and now I am like addicted. Like it's crazy. I'm not great, but I'm fun.
You never have to be great at something. You have to enjoy it.
Well, you're exactly right. But I think and I can tie this into teaching band actually. I am stimulated by trying to get better. Like that is very stimulating to me. I think personally that my desire to get better is much greater than my need to be perfect or the best.
I'm going to say it. I have to do this question every time because I'm on this thing of, again, I'm not an anti-perfectionist, but do you know what my definition of a perfectionist is?
What is this?
You ready?
I'm
It's
ready.
somebody who's incredibly annoying when they screw up because you're going to make a mistake.
Mm,
And it goes back to the perfect intent. Because what I'm hearing is, it's funny because like we go on these podcasts and we go off topic, but it's totally on topic. At some point, what you're saying is I have to be personally healthy so that my classroom can be amazing, right? And so,
right.
and when did the exercise become an important part of who you were as a person?
Oh my gosh, years ago. I mean, when you're in like your late 20s or mid 20s, then it's vanity, right? You got to look good. Like, let's be real. Like, it's because you want to look good, right? But then when you experience all the other benefits, it's like getting up at 4 a.m. If you haven't experienced what it's like, especially living in Metro Atlanta, if you haven't experienced what it's like to be up when it's dark, there are no cars out, it's quiet. And then I would often go straight from the gym to school and I would shower and get dressed at school. So the only people in the building are me and 3 custodians, and that's it. And wow, what a way to start my day. I feel like it's my own private world. I'm so focused and locked in. I'm so prepared when the first kid hits the door. I mean, the days that I don't do it, I feel miserable. Like I feel completely different.
I envy you because I was also not a morning person, but I became one when I got older. It's just one of those things. But I've never gotten that get up at 4 a.m. and work out kind of thing vibe. So I'm that horrible do it after school kind of guy. But what do you say to the young teacher out there or any teacher out there about just keeping yourself mentally into it, physically into it outside of work? How much credit do you give your success or just who you are as a person into that?
Well, if I'm being honest, I definitely spent years doing too much work, like just I didn't really do anything else. Like I did band from the moment I woke up until, midnight. I was answering parent emails. One time I
Mm,
remember a parent said to me, "Oh my gosh, you responded to my email at 3 a.m." And this was like on a school night, you know? And I thought that I was actually helping myself, and I actually was not at all. And it took me a really long time to figure that out. Another story is when I was at Hopewell, I made best friends with the custodians, as everyone should. And so they would let me into the building like whenever. So over the weekend, late at night. And so it was a Saturday. I had been there for hours and hours and hours. And then there was a Cold Stone Creamery, like not far from my school. And so I was like, I'm gonna go get some ice cream on the way home. So I go in there and there's my principal and his wife, which by the way, this principal was extraordinary. He was absolutely extraordinary, just amazing. And so I'm like, hi, and I'm chit-chatting. And he goes, Audrey, you were in the school, weren't you? And I was like, yep. Because he knew that I was, just working like crazy. But as I've gotten older and more experienced and wiser and learned all sorts of lessons, now I realize that I'm healthier and a better teacher for the children because I am doing these other things. Because the work's going to be there no matter what. And you could work for 3 days in a row and still not get it all done. So, I make it a priority. I have a tennis practice and probably 2 tennis matches every week. And so I just make a priority like, hey, whatever's not done by whatever time, I got to make sure I leave and get to this tennis match. Or another thing that I do is I listen to all sorts of music that's outside of band. One of my favorite things to do is to go to concerts. I go to as many concerts as I possibly can. Last week, my husband and I were at McCartney.
oh,
We went to see Mammoth last night. Yeah, we're constantly going to concerts, and that also feeds my soul. But it also brings me back to why I started loving music to begin with. Like I didn't know anything about James Swearingen when I was 10, right?
I might have
Right.
played something back then. Who knows?
Oh, I definitely did. I played lots of James Swearingen. But, it's because of all the other music that I loved that I ended up loving band. So I try not to get too removed from that because it does drive my teaching.
Well, I mean, I think that's, part of like what I said, this whole show is about culture before content. And sometimes I always say to those things, we could dive into which warm-ups do you use, how are your long tones going, and all those things. But I think those are those things all of us do. But I think what makes us unique is, I'm going to, just say this, you don't get selected to conduct the All-State Band just because hey, it's your turn. Hey, let's get this person to conduct the All-State Band. It's because we look to the people and we look to everyone and we want to capture success. And I think
Sure.
that's what this show has always been is like, I have 0% original ideas. I have stolen
Oh,
everything from
none of
everyone.
us.
And I can even like flat out, I don't even pick my own literature these days because I am now to the point of going, I can name 10 people off the top of my head who are going to pick better literature than I am. So I'm just going to go to them first and get their opinions.
Yeah.
And then I'll pick one of those. But like even the warm-ups, even just the rituals of like, and like you said, getting to know their names, just anything that I can. And that's what I think that what makes the show special is because everyone has their own way.
Right.
But let's get back a litlittle bit to the band room classroom. So this is kind of a band podcast here, but and so I'm thinking of the culture. Where does culture start for you? Because when I think of the band classroom, I think to myself, yeah. If I was going to walk into your classroom, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to watch how you greet the kids at the door. I'm going to see what your routines are. I'm going to see, how you speak to the kids. And then the whole thing that I love to do is walk behind a band and pay attention to how the kids are paying attention. And it's not that they are or they aren't. I want to know why. Because I think in my life, in my success, or in what's the opposite of that? Not success. I think it always comes down to, why is a kid not paying attention? What did I do not to capture them? And I'm not saying this as a statement, but that's what I'm saying. What does a culturally successful rehearsal look like?
Right.
That's really the question.
And part of what you said is key: reflection. When things don't go well, you've got to look within yourself and figure out first, like, what did I do or what did I not do for that to go well? And then you build on that. You come up with the solutions, and the things that work, you keep. The things that don't work, then don't do that again. But, I've told people all the time, my first 4 years of teaching in North Carolina, it took me 4 years to get a superior rating at festival. And I came out of college top of my game for the time. I was like most outstanding music education senior and most outstanding instrumentalist and commencement speaker and all this stuff. And then I'm sure everybody's got this story, I'm sure. So my first year teaching, I contacted my wind ensemble director, Scott Carter at ECU. And I was like, gosh, I don't know what to program. And he suggested, are you ready, David? Oh, you know.
Oh, no.
Oh, you know.
Oh, no.
Not air for band. Not air for band. With my little teeny tiny. So my first school was Mount Pleasant Middle School in Cabarrus County, North Carolina. And man, I loved that community. I love the community of every school that I've taught at. And I have been so fortunate to have had an amazing principal at that school. I was working beside Lee DeVore Smith, who was amazing. She was at the high school, and she taught me a lot of what I learned as a first year teacher. So when I was there, my program, it was like the smallest middle school in the county. The town had one traffic light that was by the school. There was like a Hardee's on the corner and a gas station and like a Whataburger and just really, really small community. So with my teeny tiny band program, I decided I was going to play air for band for festival. And that did not go well, David.
I wonder why.
That did not go well. That did not go well. But, I also was fortunate to be surrounded by very honest band directors who were training me in a manner where, they didn't sugarcoat anything. I mean, like, nobody was mean or awful or anything like that. But I mean, that South Central District of North Carolina was part of what taught me to teach. And the whole thing where at festival and they put your score up in the window or everybody knows what you got and all that, but they always gave great feedback. And it was important to me to take that feedback and just to always be reflective, to make things better. So second year, I learned a little bit more. Third year, I'm going, okay, there's something else that's missing here. Every year I tried to change something to make it better. And I remember I went to a clinic that Linda Gammon was giving, and just it changed my life. Like I think that was what started my career on the path that it's on now. With the structure, the routine, like all the things that you asked me about, like the connection with the children, pedagogy, all of that. And I think it started. It just kind of clicked when I went to that clinic. So my fourth year at Mount Pleasant, I finally got a superior rating. And then I, moved to Georgia, and then that community was a completely different community. So again, like every time you fall flat on your face or something doesn't work, the first thing you have to do is say, okay, what did I do or not do? And, like I told you before, my desire to improve just outweighs my desire to be perfect. So, I mean, that goes for everything, even including, like you said, the class management and, the students paying attention in class and all of that.
Well, you've changed out. You're like, this is your third year at your new school, and I hate to
Yes.
say new. I don't want to say new school because to me, it's like after like 40 days, you're like, yeah, old school. It really is. I was talking to my students the other day. We've been together for a whopping 41 days, but it feels like we've been together for 2 years already because we've
Oh,
already
sure.
we I always work to get past that. I am not the center of their universe. They are the center of their universe. But it takes trying to flip that switch. What are the things that you noticed every time how many times have you switched schools? Curiously,
This is my third school.
and so what I say is every time you change schools, you do it differently, better, or you betterly do it different. What are some of the things that you've noticed in this past 3 years? Like
Mhm.
this goes back to me thinking about young teachers or somebody who's out there looking to make a change. As you've made this third year change, what are things that you noticed that happened better? That because you already said I went to festival, got this feedback, and I took it because that's what I think shapes us was we take feedback, but then the next time it comes up, we already have a plan in place. Like, what was your plan going into this school now, and how quickly have you been able to put your culture in place?
Well, first, I was very grateful to Dr. Gregory Denson for handing me this gift of a school because, gosh, I love teaching. Like I said, I loved every community that I've taught in, and this is no exception. Also, the work that he did, it's a Title I school, extraordinary. His last year, they played at state conference and they played at national MFA. I mean, he just did outstanding work. But I will say this: the very first parent meeting that I had the first year, I said, I'm not Dr. Denson and I'm not trying to be him. And that was the truth. Like that, when you establish that immediately, then the parents, now they're on your side, like cuz they know naturally, especially like the parents that have been part of the program for a long time, they're going to compare, right? Or they're going to miss a lot of the things that they had before. But, if you tell them that up front, then I think that you're actually you're setting yourself up for success, right?
Right.
But one thing that I definitely have gotten better with throughout my career is connecting with the families and the communities. And, for example, again, like you said, we don't have original ideas. Okay. I'll have to tell you the background story on this too. So every year we do a costume concert in October where all the kids and the audience members and the directors dress up in
Oh,
costumes.
there it is on the screen. If you're listening, there's a
There
picture
it
of Wednesday.
is.
There's Wednesday Adam direct. I see a banana.
There's definitely a banana. And they're hysterical. Like the kids are so funny. But yeah, we do this costume concert and then out in the parking lot we do a trunk or treat where the parents are the ones that, decorate their trunks and pass out candy. The directors, we decorate our trunks and pass out candy and play music, and it's so much fun. And I'll tell you how that idea was born when I was at Hopewell. At my current school, we are very fortunate to have like an actual theater and amazing facilities. But at Hopewell, it was like classic middle school where we performed in the gym. You like
Oh, the
drag all your
gym.
stuff down to the gym for the concert, including the chairs.
Mm.
So my last year, we weren't able, I think the gym was double booked. So we weren't able to have that costume concert. And so at the time, one of my former students, it was sort of an apprenticeship program that they had at the high school, which is awesome. When they're seniors, they can go and work out in the community, or my former student wanted to study music education. So she was able to come work with me every day for part of the day. So we're sitting there and, I learned from everybody. Like, you don't have to be older than me. She was 17 years old. And so I'm sitting there going, oh my gosh, what am I going to do about this concert? Like, we can't have it in the gym and I can't move the date. And so the high school director, Daniel Scott, was like, hey, why don't you come over to the high school and you can have it at the high school? And I was like, okay, cool. Well, then my former student was like, you could do it outdoors in their little amphitheater area. And then why don't you do a trunk or treat in the parking lot afterwards?
Hmm.
And I'd been teaching for 22 years, and I never thought about that. And I went, holy moly. That's brilliant. So that was the first year that I'd ever done it. And of course, that was a keeper. It was just wildly successful. And so, I brought that with me to East Cobb. Another thing that we do that I'm very proud of is our Play It Again concert. So again, this is not something that I came up with. When I moved to Georgia, there was a band director, Marcia Laird, in Fulton County. And she said, I do this concert and I want you to come see it. Like, I'm inviting you to come watch this concert. So I think she called it the flashback concert, but she had like her kids and their parents performing, and it was like pop music and, music from the 80s or whatever. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. So I went, at some point in my career, I want to be able to do that. And so back in like 2017, 2018, I believe, I had a part-time assistant director, Katie Groves. And so I said, Katie, we gotta do this thing. Like, it's the coolest thing. I've never done it before. I think it's really going to connect with the community. She was all on board. We came up with the name Play It Again. And so what we do is we invite alumni, so students who used to be in our band program, the high schoolers who were in our band program, and even some who are not. We feed Wheeler High School, so the Wheeler High School band students are invited. Any of the students' family members who were in the band when they were younger. And it's really funny because a lot of them are intimidated by it. And they're like, oh, well, I was only in band for 2 years. I don't remember anything. Or like, it's like riding a bike. You can do it. But you also make it as convenient for them as possible, because a lot of parents or family members say, well, I don't even have an instrument. And we're like, you know what? We will find you an instrument.
Yep. We
can put an instrument in your hand. So a lot of the parents, we let them borrow an instrument, throughout the rehearsals and the performance. Some of our instructors, we've had area musicians to come do it. We had other teachers, and, we invite all of the cluster faculty, staff. We had a principal from one of our elementary schools play flute with us last year. Our feeder elementary music teachers played with us, teachers at my school. We had 2 families the last 2 years where there were 3 generations of family members that were performing with us in that ensemble. And I can't tell you what that does, not just for the band program, but just for the sense of community. Having all of those people, from all different neighborhoods and backgrounds and different band backgrounds sitting next to each other and rehearsing and producing this awesome product with, cool music, and nobody worrying about being perfect, and we have 6th through 8th graders that play. We tell the 6th graders, even if you can just play 3 notes from that song, then you play the best 3 notes that you can possibly play, So, I feel like I'm getting a lot better with connecting with the communities, and that in itself is making the band program much stronger.
Well, what do you say to the young teacher out there? Because there's 2 things that I wrote down in my notes as you were talking. Number 1 is, I don't know about for you, but I know one thing for sure. It took me until I was about 35 before parents weren't scary anymore. Because I think when I started teaching, I viewed them as my parents, and now I'm at the age where I'm viewing them as my children. And so now it's completely flipped, and my own comfort level, and nothing's changed. It's just my perception out there. But then that other thing, as you said, community. I think that's one of the most powerful things you can do is involve the community. And I mean, besides the things that we think, do you have any like thoughts on, and you said you've taught in, South Carolina, North Carolina, Georgia, you've been in different, different areas of the country. You've been that, but how do we engage more than just our parents? How do we engage our community? What's some advice you would have for a young teacher out there just to even just start?
Well, I mean, just the 2 things that I mentioned were easy. You have to make the parents and the family members feel like they're a part of what you're doing, right?
Right.
Like you can't make it seem like you're just kind of dictating all of these things to the kids, and they're not involved.
And thus comes the larger part of the conversation. How do we teachers let go of things that we control, and that's here it is 50 minutes in, and I'm going to ask the big question is, when do we learn to let go so that our programs can be who they are?
When you check your ego at the door.
Oh my goodness, that's a big door.
Check your ego at the door. That's a big part of it. That's a huge part of it.
But and I just thinking to myself is like, letting go is probably one of the hardest things that I think I had to learn as a young teacher, and I've gotten much better at it. But I don't even think I have advice on how to do it. I just know that it needs to happen. I need to quit being such a control freak. Is that your mindset? Are you? I mean, I would assume that we're all control freaks to some.
To some extent.
To some extent. But at some point,
yeah.
When does it work better? When it's my idea, or when it's the students' ideas, or when it's, or even better, how do we get my ideas to come out of the students without telling them?
I think it's a mixture, because you have to look at it as a partnership. And it's a three-way partnership. Like a lot of times, like if we have a behavior issue with a student and we call the parents in, which, by the way, speaking is way better than email. Like written words do not get the message across the way you want it to. But when you get someone, like I personally prefer that they actually come and sit in the room, even over calling them on the phone, so that everybody can look at each other face to face, right? But like if we have a behavior problem with the student, I request that the student is also there in the meeting. And I'm very clear about the fact that this is a three-way conversation, like the student, they also have a chance to speak, and say what they would like to contribute to the conversation. So you have to remember that, and you have to make sure that the parents feel that they are connected in that manner.
Well, would you agree or disagree? See, I like these parts of the show. Would you agree, though, that you learn, when you have those meetings with everybody in the room, that you actually learn something even about yourself from that kid? Because sometimes I will say this, that perspective sometimes doesn't come out unless you hear it from the kid.
Oh, yeah.
One of the things that somebody said to me, and it's been stuck, the truth is always somewhere in the middle of what you believe it, even if you were the one controlling it. And so, how many times have we heard a kid say something like, oh my gosh, they are actually right. I need to think about that. Or maybe that's why the behavior occurred in the first place.
Well, one thing that I say a lot is you have to listen more than you speak, or at least listen as much as you speak. But, I try to listen more than I speak. And I think that when you do that, not just with the students, but their parents too, especially when I've had parents pop off on me, like we all have before, right? And I will continue to at some point, because either, I have done something that I, was out of line. I hope not, like that's not anybody's goal ever, but it happens when the parents just don't agree with you. Or it could be that parent's having a really bad day and I was in the right spot to be on the receiving end of that, but you have to look at those situations and, just take a step back and be like, okay, let's talk through this and figure it out.
Well, I don't have an answer for this, but I think my brain says it's I would much rather be proactive than reactive. And it takes forever sometimes. Sometimes the reactive is as a result of not seeing something, but I there's no magical advice here, but I mean, I want everything proactive, and I'm thinking of and personally, I'm in a new situation. I'm waiting for my students' voice to come through so that 100% of the time in band, we are focused on the band 100%. I don't know if that makes sense, but it takes time to adjust. It takes time to build that culture. And I think that's really what's at the heart of what we speak. Because here's the thing. If you asked your kids what they enjoyed about band, I bet you'd have very little talk about the music. And you'd have a lot more talk about the music making and what that classroom means to them. So, I always like my Matt Wood advice. Ask the kids on Monday, how was their weekend? And, and maybe for me, you can ask your kids, what do you enjoy? Give me one word what you enjoy about band and let me know what they say. Because I'd actually be curious. And I would actually ask the 6th grade over the 8th grade, because I think I think there's a reason the kids come back to band. And I'm sometimes We should probably listen to them. They have some great advice as kids.
Oh yeah, they absolutely do. Yeah.
Okay, so here comes the scariest part of the show.
Uh-oh.
We've been going for 55 minutes and it goes like that. And just as I get to the heart of something I want to talk about, it's nearly over. But as I do at the end of every show, I used to call it final thoughts, and I think we still call it final thoughts on the little banner on the bottom, but it really is, it's really parting. I think it's more like parting words or, something about you, what does culture mean to you? Culture, advice, anything, maybe something you've learned. No real words. But,
Right.
before, what would you say culture means to you, and what would be your final thoughts today?
Culture is people first, humans first, band is second. And I feel like that once you establish that, it drives everything else. Everything else is a byproduct. And I'll even expand on that even farther if you don't mind. I don't know how many
Please
seconds
do.
I have to do this.
You have as many as you want. We can go another hour. They won't mind. It's fine.
I'll try to make this as concise as possible. But it's always interesting to me when I talk, especially to younger teachers, or sometimes like I've conducted a bunch of honor bands. And so, I meet people, other directors, who say, gosh, what do I need to do to conduct an honor band? And then my first reaction to that is, well, you've got to make your band great first. Like, you can't just leap over being a great band director, to go do all of these cool things. But that also is an indication of the lack of patience. Everybody just wants everything to happen immediately. And when that happens, we're not meticulous sometimes. When you're not consistent, that's when things fall apart. When you don't show the students that you care, I said earlier, check your ego at the door, right? Like, that's a big thing. Or like I said, you should listen more than you speak. All of that is a big thing. So all of that together, I think, is establishing a culture that will lead to success. But you've got to put that human aspect of it first before everything else.
That's amazing. Just amazing. I will follow that up. People are the product. Music is just what we do.
Yeah, it's a vehicle, right?
It is. Well, before you go today, and by the way, amazing conversation today. I love sitting here talking band with anyone and everyone, and can do it forever. We didn't even get to the clarinet. I could talk clarinet for another hour.
So
but let's. You said we could share your email with our people, and to our listeners and viewers out there. Email. I can flat out tell you that I've, people email me that they've emailed the guest. So I knew that they do come, but let's start with your email first. It's audrey.murphy@cobbk12.org, which is an easier one for being a longer one, but Audrey is AUDREY and Murphy is MURPHY, and Cobb is 2 B's, COBBK12.org. And then we also have your socials. Your Instagram for your district is @Cobb Inst Music, or Cobb Instrumental Music, COBBINST Music. And for those of you out there, if you've never looked up at Cobb County Schools, just amazing. You got some great leadership out there, some great band directors, period. And your Facebook is Audrey Murphy Kunka, which is, by the way, the easiest way to find it is just type Audrey Murphy. That's how I found it. And we're friends now. Yay. Or you can look up audrey.murphy.773. Again, Audrey with an E, Murphy without the E. That's the other way that I remember how to do it. But oh my gosh, so much fun today. I could spend I would love to spend more hours. I always tell people, do your research on people. You'd be shocked what look, a comment. Yes, hope to connect with you down here in Cobb County, Georgia, from Lauren McBride.
Hi, Lauren.
Oh, it's so nice. But thank you so much for being on the show today. Oh, there's Craig. Hi, Craig. Craig is my cohort in crime, and he can back up everything that I say every day. By the way, working with somebody. Oh, there's Tiffany Hudson Hits. Oh my gosh,
Tiffany!
All these amazing people.
Talk about rock star. Oh my gosh.
Yes, you are the literal best. Oh my gosh. I like how the comments all came here at the last moment, but I mean, that's just a celebration of you, because you truly are an amazing teacher, and I hope people contact you. And now that we're Facebook friends, we can have some fun.
That's right.
But thank you for being on the show today.
It's been an honor and a pleasure. So fun, David. Thank you.
Oh my gosh, thank you. All right, another fun, amazing show. But thank you for spending your part of your day with us. I know it's, well, if you're here live, thank you for spending your Sunday. If you're listening, hey, the thing's almost over. But as we wrap up, we would love for you to share this podcast on your social media, because when you do, more teachers find their way. And I'm hearing from more and more people. It is fantastic. And it builds the kind of community where we can all grow together. And I also want to share that I have a website, davidduarte.org. You can get PLC lesson plans, a lot of things. If you need interpretation or your own version, just contact me. I'm more than glad to share. You can email me at david.duarte@me.com. And I do have an Instagram that I've created at Culture B4, the letters B and 4, I guess 4 the number, B4 content, at Culture Before Content. And don't forget, this episode, along with many others, can be found at musicforall.org/podcast. And again, a heartfelt thanks to Music for All for bringing this show to life, and to Yamaha, our national presenting sponsor, for making it all possible. I am David Duarte, your host, and want to thank you for being on another episode, and hope to see you next time.